The swamp light settled over Moat Cailin like a tarnished crown, its last glow filtering through tatters of mist and scrawny willows. On the parapet that was little more than a spine of cracked basalt and peat-clogged mortar, Theon Greyjoy stood alone, hands braced against stone that bled cold through his gloves. Below the causeway, ancient, treacherous, the only solid path across the neck, twisted toward the horizon in a khaki ribbon, drowned on either side by yawning, brackish pools that whispered of countless drowned travelers. The crumbling keeps of the moat hunched behind him, half devoured by moss and slime, yet they were all the refuge he possessed. Iron-born banners flapped beside Ruff's own wolf heads he had begged from green boys who still prayed to the old gods. The griffin of Stonehouse and the forked-tail seals of Black Tide jostled one another in the wind like children at war. Strange heraldry for a man who had no true sigil left, only sins, and the memory of a family he had murdered for applause that never came. A raven's hoarse croak cut through the hush. Theon lifted his head. It alighted on a breach in the battlement, one glossy eye fixed on him, as though it knew the weight of his thoughts. The lies told in Winterfell's crypts, the boys burned, the desperate flight. Each recollection was a redoubt brand pressed to the pale flesh of his mind. He wondered again if he might yet peel away everything false and reveal a stark heart beneath the Greyjoy skin, or whether he would forever be the boy who could not choose a home until both turned to ashes in his grasp. Behind him clanked a boot. Black Lauren approached, spare of words, broad of shoulder, face scarred like a cracked helm. 4 more wagons come limping up the causeway, he grunted. Pigs, turnips, half a cask of salt beef. Tell the Reeds my thanks, Theon said. Lauren nodded but did not move away. Banners on the northern road, he added after a beat. Harbison's quartermaster swears he glimpsed a flayed man at dusk. Theon swallowed. Flayed. No sigil chilled a man so thoroughly in these marshes as the pink cloak of House Bolton, and no Boltons chilled him like the bastard. Ramsay Snow, no Bolton now, rode somewhere beyond the mists, bringing hounds trained to track terror and knives forged for peeling hope from bone. The mere thought of him pinched Theon's lungs. My tormentor, my reflection, my sentence yet unserved. But fear was a luxury he could not purchase here. Sound no alarms, he instructed. Let them creep closer. The neck prefers patient men. He turned again to the wan plains, trying to stretch his sight into the gloam. Have the oarsmen plant spikes across the shallows. I want every channel mapped, and every rotten plank replaced before sunrise. Mordejista. Aye. Lauren's voice gentled, almost grudgingly proud. You learned well, Prince. Prince thought. The word felt brittle as ice at dawn, but Theon allowed himself to clutch it for heartbeat before casting it aside. He had rank only so long as men chose to obey, and obedience weighed less than a breath when the winds changed. Night seeped across the wetlands, thick with bog gas and distant frogs. Torches gleamed from the lower bailey where a medley of Northmen and Ironborn shared meager stew. Theon descended the stair, cloak snagging on broken nails. Courtyard's packed mud sucked at his boots, but though fatigue dragged his limbs, he stopped beside each cluster of men, speaking names, trading nods. Rickard Stonehouse, the young bastard whose father had tossed him to the neck to mend boats, returned Theon's greeting with wary gratitude. 2 reeds, lanky as reeds themselves, reported 3 safe passages through the mire that could swallow a horse whole. Each face, northern or ironborn, held questions he dared not answer. Why stand here? Why not flee? Because Ramsay will not stop at Moat Cailin, Theon thought. He never stops. He will ride for Winterfell, for Deepwood Moat, for seated choices and broken suns. If I fail, he will burn every scrap of kinship left in me. So I stand in the commander's tower, little more than a shell roofed in tarred hide. Crouched Maester Holm, pepper-haired and roomy-eyed, quill scratching parchment. He looked up when THEON entered. "Another bird from Barrowton, my lord," Holmes said. "Lady Dustin sends 2 carts of pitch, but she warns her own levy marches south to the Twins. The Freys scream for tribute." "No, it's you," THEON exhaled. "Right her. Moat Cailin guards, every northern heart still beating. A cask of pitch buys a mile of safe road. Remind her the Boltons serve King Tommen now, but the neck serves the old gods, and the old gods remember debt." Holmes' brows rose. Surprise or approval? THEON could not tell. He studied the chipped table. Upon its warped surface lay a rough sketch of defenses. Dikes reinforced with log palisades, hidden trenches, murder holes cut into causeway towers. A week ago the moat had been a ruin fit only for ghosts. Now the gray scrawl resembled a living beast with claws struck outward. 8 days more, and perhaps it might bite. He tapped a spot where the road pinched between 2 crags. "We mine here," he said softly. "Lauren's sappers will dig through the night." Holm nodded, setting quill to ink again. Candles' flames sputtered as wind sneaked through split boards, lending the chamber the hiss of unseen snakes. THEON closed his eyes and saw Winterfell's courtyards brimming with snow. Bran's laughter echoing off basalt towers, Robb's grin shy and unstoppable. Then came flame, screaming, crows plucking eyes. He opened them again before grief devoured the fragile shield of duty he had built. Past midnight, he walked the ramparts once more. Fog rolled across the fens. It beaded in his hair, chilled his cheeks. Somewhere, a pipe played. A lilting iron island's dirge for drowned lovers, and it twined with distant crickets to form a lullaby at once alien and achingly familiar. He paused to listen. Is this what a home sounds like? Layers of song, some salt and some soil, stitched together by need? From below climbed Mira Reed, mud-splattered, amber eyes bright as marsh fire. She hoisted a tangle of nets, crawling with dun-skulled eels. "For the cookpots," she said, dropping her haul with a wet slap. THEON crouched, finger probing the sinewy bodies. "You fish as deftly as your father's letters promise." She shrugged. "The neck feeds those who know her moods." Her gaze flicked toward the dark north, and she strangles those who don't. "My father says Ramsay is too loud for these parts. Drums scare the herons. They'll scare the neck worse. None to demoni. They'll scare my men," THEON admitted. "But fear cuts both ways." Mira studied him, head tilted. "When the drums beat, bind your men to the ground with purpose. Give them something to believe louder than Bolton steel. The old gods," he offered, half hopeful. She shook her head, rain-black hair whipping. "Belief in you." The sentence stung like salt on raw flesh because it presumed he was worth the faith of decent folk. He wanted to laugh, to tell her of the miller's boys, of the sneer on Robb's lips when he realized THEON was lost. Yet he only nodded, letting the mist hide the quake of his breath. The dawn patrol found Bolton scouts impaled on stakes beyond the outer ditch, their mouths stuffed with rotting reeds. A gift from the neck itself. THEON stared at the corpses long enough to feel the first stir of pity, then forced himself to turn away. He could not afford softness. Ramsay would have none. That afternoon, arrows shrieked from unseen hillocks, feathering a supply wagon. 2 oxen toppled, braying. Tar barrels erupted in roaring fire. THEON sprinted to the yard where flames painted faces, umber and gold. He seized a bucket line, shouting orders until the blaze died under hissing mud. When the last ember faded, he knelt by a charred plank and pressed fingers to the molten brand. Impressed there, he wiped soot on his leggings. He wants me rattled, he muttered. Lauren spat beside him. He'll get a different rattle when the walls fall on his skull. Night came crimson, horizon lit by Bolton watchfires, strung like beads across the bog's far edge. Drums thudded slow and heavy, womp womp, echoing through the watery desolation with the portent of a giant's heartbeat. Theon climbed the southern tower to watch. Each pulse seemed to tug at his ribs, plucking dread like a bowstring. Around him clustered archers from House Tallheart, their fingers twitching on bow staves, though no enemy yet showed. He inhaled the scent of damp rope. Think of Rob, sworn brothers in a booth at River Run. Cups of wine dashed between challenges of archery and wrestling. Think of Bran, tiny hands clutching saddle straps. Think of Sansa, singing of Bale counters and autumn queens. Let every memory be a brick. Stack them high. Build a fortress no drum can breach. Third hour of drumming, he ordered horn signals. 3 rising blasts. The note of defiance once sounded by Ned Stark's banners at the Trident. The ironborn horns answered, deep as whale song. Between them the moat shuddered awake. Torches flared to life atop battlements, casting burnt orange halos through fog. The drums persisted, but now they met replies just as fierce. From somewhere in the dark came the shrill whine of a dog. Hound's cry, frantic, cut short in a wet gurgle. Mirror's traps, Theon guessed. Teeth spring steel, strong. He pictured Ramsay's kennel limping. He stayed on the tower until sunrise, unwilling to cede the night. When the clouds paled to pearl, he descended, body stiff but spirit oddly light. Survival of a single night felt victory enough. In the yard, children from nearby Crannog villages poured swamp clay into wicker molds, shaping crude sling bullets hardened by hearth fire. Gray-muzzled ironborn veterans taught them curses to shout while they flung the clay. Northern crofters practiced with rusty spears beside sailors who called out seerheims for timing thrusts. Theon watched it all, a stitched-together army hewn from despair, and found it beautiful in its unlikeliness. At midday the Bastion scouts returned, bearing a ragged banner. Pink field, red man. They had cut it from a slain outrider. Theon rose to accept the trophy. Its silk felt damp, slime-slick, obscene. He draped it across a midden heap, where pigs rooted, letting filth cling to the flayed man's gaudy grin. When he looked up, he saw his men watching, jaws tight, eyes gleaming. Something silent passed among them, the taste of insulted pride. Good, he thought. Let them feast on that. That evening, Maester Holm brought grim news inked on damp parchment. Deepwood Moat fallen. Asha Greyjoy captured. Stannis Baratheon marching. Uncertain friend or foe. Theon gripped a letter until his nails tore paper. Do we rally to Stannis? Holm asked. Not yet. Theon's voice rasped. We hold. Ramsay is first, then we choose allegiance. He turned away before the maester could read on his face the private agony of Asha's name. Sister, pirate, the bold heart he had always envied. If she lived, he must later answer for his defiance of father's orders, for wearing half a wolf's cloak. Let that reckoning wait. For now, there was only the neck and fear, and the bastard's shadow creeping ever closer. Rain sluiced the moat that night, hammering roofs, swelling ditches until moat and marsh became one black sea. Theon strode the ramparts under a cloak heavy as guilt, lantern bobbing. In its glow, he glimpsed shapes, reeds bending, water rippling, a half-submerged tree stump that looked disturbingly like a flayed torso. He wrenched his eyes away, whispering the names of every drowned god he could recall. And then, the 7 they scorned, and lastly, the old gods he hoped might forgive a prodigal. None answered, but dawn answered. She slid gray-pink along the water, prying open the night's stern lips to reveal a world intact. Theon let out a breath he hadn't known he held. He considered sleeping, but chose instead to walk among the tents, trading murmured greetings, adjusting bedding rolls, sharing the last of his dried squid with a North Coast sailor who wept quietly for a boy lost at sea. Leadership, he realized, was often no more than presence. 3 days passed in similar storms. Ramsay's vanguard probed, firing quarrels from skiffs that sank in hidden shallows. Each time they retreated, dragging corpses of those claimed by the mire. On the 4th morning, the drums ceased. Silence settled, a silence so vast it felt sentient. Ravens burst from the trees south of the causeway, black petals swirling. Theon lifted his spyglass. At first he saw nothing but wavering heat over gray water. Then a shimmer resolved into ranks. Pikemen in studded leather, horsemen in tarnished mail, banners emblazoned with a red flayed man on pink creeping above the slough like obscene lilies. Behind them trotted hounds straining at leashes, muzzles frothing, and at their head rode Ramsay Bolton, slight frame burdened by cloak of human skin, stitched with silver thread, hair dark and tangled, smile too wide, too white. Even at a distance, Theon felt the smile find him, felt it hooking his spine like a fish on line. He lowered the glass. "Signal the archers," he told the sergeant near the tower stairs. "Let none loose until I give word." Lauren's boots pounded up behind him. "The bastard brings near 400. "We have 300 within the walls," Theon replied, "and another 100 hidden in the fens to either flank. The neck itself fights for us. No, see, him." Lauren's beard twitched with something like admiration. Then the bastard has miscounted his gods. Below, Ramsay halted just beyond bow shot. He raised a hand. A horn blew, 3 flat notes. Barley dot. Theon's stomach lurched. "Fetch the white flag," he ordered, "and bring me the hood." The hood was Ramsay's gift from another life. A filthy sack that had covered Theon's head through nights of flaying blades and casual cruelty. He had kept it stowed inside his trunk, unable to burn it, unable to touch it. Now he demanded it, and the quartermaster produced it gingerly, shaking. Theon took it, brushed a thumb across dried bloodstains at the throat seam, then slung it over his shoulder like a ragged standard. On the battlements he raised the hood high so Bolton eyes could see. Ash rippled across their ranks. Even hounds grew restless, noses quivering. Ramsay's smile faltered, only a twitch, but Theon marked it. He answered by lifting his gaze to meet the bastards, letting 15 paces of muddy ground and a world of ruined trust span between them. With exaggerated care, Theon set the hood upon the battlement, smoothing its rotten folds. Then he drew a dagger and pinned the hood in place, steel crunching stone. He left it there, flapping in the wind like a crowpeck trout. Ramsay's lips thinned. He gestured again, this time brutally. Drums resumed with a frenzy. "They come," Lauren said. "They will drown," Theon whispered. But whether promise or prayer, he did not know. The first Bolton charge splashed across the mire within an hour. Men trudged thigh-deep, shields raised, policing arrows whistling from the ridge. As they reached the outer ditch, hidden plank bridges collapsed, pitching them into pits lined with stakes and broken potsherds. Green fire erupted as pitch caught spark, turning water to writhing flame. Screams drifted on steam. Yet more Boltons pressed in, bodies forming a grotesque dam. From the left flank, the next children emerged. Crannogmen in reed cloaks, darting like ghosts, jabbing spears into exposed legs. Ironborn skirmishers hurled nets weighted with stones, dragging sworn swords under scum where they thrashed until silence claimed them. Theon watched, jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. "Hold your arrows," he murmured again and again, until the enemy clogged the causeway 10 deep, surging over their dead. Only then did he drop his hand. 1,000 bowstrings thrummed. Shafts darkened the air. Ramsay's front rank staggered. Men stumbled. Dogs yelped. Shields splintered. Theon's archers knocked, drew, loosed again. The bastion shivered with their thunder. Ramsay's own archers answered, arrows clattering against towers in impotent sparks. Theon ducked a flight that hummed past his ear. He scanned for the bastard. There, astride a gray stallion on a hummock, whipping the beast into froth, screaming orders unheard above the din. Theon marked the distance, the angle, the wind. He plucked a longbow from a fallen northern youth, tested the draw. Stiff but serviceable. He knocked a black-fletched shaft, once gifted by Mira, lifted his gaze to find Ramsay again. Bowstring kissed his cheek. Breath held. He released. Across the marsh, the arrow streaked true. It struck the gray's flank. Horse screamed, reared, toppled sidelong, throwing its rider into slime. Ramsay vanished beneath thrashing hooves and black water. Theon's heart hammered as though tethered to the same arrow. But the bastard surfaced, face splattered with muck, cloak torn. He clawed free, rose, found his helm missing. Even at this distance, Theon saw rage kindle, white, pure, unquenchable. Ramsay snatched a nearby pikeman's spear and hacked the man down for hesitation, then pointed the blooded tip toward the moat. Theon lowered the bow. Good, he muttered. Bleed for each stab. All day the clash raged. Bolten bodies choked trenches. Moat walls charred beneath pitch pots. Twice the enemy reached the first gate, only to find it collapsed by hidden pulleys, burying them under stone. At dusk, Ramsay ordered torches flung, oil-soaked driftwood hissing against wet ramparts. Flames licked upward, but rain returned with thunderous contempt, smothering them before they could grip. When the moon rose thin and wan, the Bolton horns finally sounded retreat. They dragged away, wounded and dead, leaving the neck strewn with broken armor and severed limbs glimmering like pale eel bellies in moonlight. The drums ceased. Silence breathed. Within the walls, the defenders did not cheer. They merely stood, mud-splattered shadows, listening to the enemy withdraw. Only when the last hoofbeat faded did they release breath, low and ragged. Theon descended to the yard where lanterns bobbed. He found Maester home, already tending the wounded. Children ferried water. Mira Reed bound a gashed arm of a boy, no older than 12. How many lost? Theon asked. 32 dead, Holmes said. 78 wounded. Most will live if Viva spares them. Theon touched the maester's sleeve. They will. Feed them muntia and seaweed broth. My ironborn swear by it. No. Amen. Didn't walish. Why? Holm nodded, though skepticism flickered. He would try anything tonight. Later, in the commander's tower, Theon washed blood from his hands. The water in the basin ran red, then pink, then clear. He stared at his reflection, eyes sunken, cheeks rough with stubble. He looked neither ironborn nor stark. He looked human. For the first time in endless moons, that felt sufficient. A knock. Lauren entered, bearing a tattered scrap. Found this on a dead Bolton sergeant, he said, offering the parchment. Theon unfolded it. The writing was jagged, but legible. Hold until dusk. Bastard intends flay Prince himself. Keep him warm. Warm? We. Theon crumpled the missive. Tell the men to sleep in shifts, he said. At dawn we rebuild every trap. Ramsay will come again. Lauren lingered. He looked shaken when the horse threw him. Shaken men can still kill. Theon glanced at the boarded window where night pressed its black face. But shaken men eventually break. He recalled the hood on the rampart, fluttering like the banner of a conquered fear, and he felt, for a fragile instant, the possibility that redemption might sprout even in blood-soaked soil. The days that followed blurred into rhythms of repair and vigilance. Each dawn unveiled new ploys from Ramsay. Barrels of bloated corpses hurled into the ditches to foul the water. Captured messengers flayed alive within earshot of the walls. Dogs loosed at night to worry sentries. Yet each cruelty bred a counter. THEON scouts lured hounds into bog pits. The Crannogmen poisoned the corpses with swamp caterbile, turning their stench back upon the invaders. Songsmiths from White Harbor improvised battle hymns to drown out the screams, and the defenders sang until throats bled. Through it all, Ramsay's smile faded by degrees. His ravens carried no triumphs. His men began to glance at shadowed pools with dread normally reserved for white walkers and winter's chill. And THEON, once prince only of regret, found authority settling over his shoulders like a well-cut jerkin. He made mistakes, underestimating a nighttime ford, misallocating arrows, but he learned, adapted, endured. In council, the Ironborn obeyed without grudge, and northern chiefs nodded to his command. Each evening, he walked the walls, listening to the frogs, noting the scent of alder smoke, committing every detail to memory in case the next dawn was his last. One violet dusk, as fireflies stitched gold threads across the reeds, a scout darted into the yard breathless with urgent tidings. Bolton banners northbound, Ramsay at their fore. Retreat. THEON stood atop the gatehouse and watched the enemy snake away across the causeway. They left fires burning, tents abandoned, gear discarded to lighten their march. The sight stole his breath more surely than any spear. Lauren joined him. He runs, the Ironborn said, disbelief coloring the single syllable. Or faints. THEON's voice shook, yet within it glimmered something wondrous. Hope, fragile as the first green bud. But he does not break camp thus for trickery. His men refuse another assault. They waited until moonrise to send scouts. By dawn, the scouts returned grinning. Ramsay's host had scattered, half toward Barrowton, half to the King's Road, the rest lost in the bog. In the commander's tower, Maester Holm unrolled fresh parchment, hands trembling. What now, Lord THEON? Lord Dottie. A smaller word than prince, but heavier, anchored in the land he stood upon. He considered the broken causeway, the charred palisade, the men sleeping in mud yet alive. He thought of Winterfell's grey walls, and the direwolf banners folded away, awaiting a hand bold enough to raise them. Now, THEON said, voice soft but carrying, we send ravens to every northern holdfast. We tell them Ramsay Snow fled Moat Cailin, defeated, and we invite them to finish what we began. Non trying. Neither nurse. Holm inhaled sharply. Lauren's eyes shone with feral glee. Reed envoys exchanged whispers that rustled like the marsh grass. THEON stepped to the window, pushing shutters wide. Dawn spread across the fens, light catching water so it blazed like scattered coin. A solitary heron lifted, wings dripping silver. He placed a hand on Syl's rough stone, feeling its chill. I was raised among wolves, he murmured, words absorbed by growing light. I forgot how to howl, but the wolves remember me. Nee. Behind him, Holmes' quills scratched a new message for the Ravencoats. Outside, carpenters hammered fresh spikes into the battered gate. And far beyond sight, Ramsay rode north, nursing wounds deeper than flesh, mind gnawed by a new predator, doubt. The neck breathed. For the first time in an age, its breath smelled of promise. THEON closed his eyes, let that promise wash over scars visible and unseen, and whispered to the dawn, we are not done. The dawn whispered back in gull cries and frog croaks, and for the first time, THEON Greyjoy believed it. Nim Shimon die, The morning after Ramsay's retreat dawns gold and pale lavender, the sort of sky fishermen in the Bight call a luck catcher. THEON stands on the highest tower of Moat Cailin, boots planted where crumbled stone meets fresh-laid planks, and watches columns of smoke coil up from the enemy's abandoned cookfires like black ribbons offered to new gods. The marsh smells of damp ash and bruised watercress. Every breath tastes like a hard-won reprieve. Below him, the courtyard hums as though a hive has woken. Cranagmen mending wicker shields, ironborn sharpening salt-pitted axes, tall heart farmers dousing last night's braziers and tipping the glowing coals into trenches where wounded men shiver against fever. Somewhere in that mingled crowd, a girl from House Fen is plucking a finger harp, its high notes ringing with more resolve than 1,000 horn. THEON listens, chest thrumming, and lets the melody stitch itself into his memory alongside wolf songs and gull cries and the rasping clank of ironborn chains, another sound that, together, might someday mean north. He descends the tower steps 2 at a time. Every face he passes turns toward him, and though most are mud-spattered, half-starved, and nursing aches that will bloom purple, they salute in the language of survivors, a quick nod, a lifted cudgel, an unashamed smile. He answers each gesture, learning anew how leadership is nourished not on banners and titles, but on glances returned and burdens shared. Near the stables, he halts to help a boy twist rag bandages around a broken spar. The lad blushes crimson at the prince's aid, but THEON shrugs it off. Princes commanded men to war, and then sailed away on silk ships. Lords stood until the walls were high again, or they fell and became the wall themselves. If he is to be anything now, he means to be a lord. By noon, the ravenry has disgorged every black-feathered courier Moat Cailin can spare. Wings loaded with terse messages written in Holmes' brisk hand. Bastard broken, Moat holds. Ride now, ride swift. The North remembers. The birds fling themselves into a sky suddenly busy with wintering cranes and scavenging gulls. THEON watches them vanish and wonders which will reach Deepwood Moat, which will find Barrington, which will die in the teeth of a falcon flown from the Dreadfort. He decides not to care. Some will survive, and that will be enough for rumor to take seed. Rumor is stronger than steel, he thinks, if you feed it blood and victory. Late that same day, Davos Seaworth arrives on a shaggy piebald, borrowed from the Risewell stables, cloak pinned with Stannis' crowned stag and flaming heart badge. His beard is crusted with road dust, and the missing finger bones make his gloved left hand sag, but his grin is irrepressible. He dismounts in a single fluid motion despite the stiffness of ride, and clasps THEON's forearm as though they have known each other a lifetime. Didn't believe the tales, he confesses, voice husky from travel. Bolton running from a Greyjoy, gods help us all. King Stannis bids me see with my own eyes and offers steel and bread for the march that must follow. Also, he lowers his voice. He hopes to hear you will kneel. THEON raises a brow. Kneel to the king who burned the godswood at Storm's End for love of a shadow? I have enough ashes without borrowing his. Yet he does not let go of Davos' arm. But if Stannis brings siege engines and mountain knights who fight for more than plunder, I will parley. I cannot promise bent knee, Sir Davos, but I can promise open gate. It is in that exchange, measured and blunt, that the second alliance of the war for the North is born. Less formal than oaths sworn before heart trees, but perhaps stronger for its lack of ceremony, for it is stitched with shared necessity and the hard fiber of truth. 3 nights later, banners gather at the moat like migrating geese. From the green hills ride Manderleys under their fat silver trouts. From the white bluffs trudge the Risewells, rust-red horses cantering despite mud-clogged hooves. And from the whispering swamp paths emerge reed longboats pole-gliding through still water, reeds strung with lanterns, blazes amber. Lady Barbary Dustin herself comes astride a black mare, hair the color of pepper bark and eyes that weigh THEON with the cool appraisal of a farrier testing a colt's legs. She brings pitch barrels and casks of dried beans, but also the soft rumor that Roose Bolton sits uneasy in King's Landing, now that Tommen's crown has lost its Lannister luster to Myrcella's Dornish claim. That whisper sparks the first council of war held beneath Moat Cailin's sagging roof in more than a century. The council is rough, no polished oak table, no gilded chairs. They meet in the old hall where moss carpets, broken flagstones, and root tendrils creep through arrow slits. Storm lanterns hang from hooked pikes, hammered into the crumbling walls, and rain patters through gaps in the shingling. Around a map crudely painted on sailcloth stand northern lords, Crannog chieftains, and iron captains who have bound their hair from their eyes, but not yet removed the rings from their ears. Stannis and Voice, 5 in all, share a side of the circle, steel gleaming Baratheon black. THEON feels every gaze tilt toward him, and despite the muddy rushlight, he sees the question shining clear: what next? He does not offer rousing speeches. Instead, he lays out facts, like knives on a butcher's block. Ramsay has fled north with perhaps 300 men, many wounded or lost to fear. The dread fort is strong but now undermanned. Its kennels are half empty, its villages resentful. Roose holds court in King's Landing, and cannot ride to his son's aid without begging Lannister gold, which may no longer flow now that Queen Cersei's grasp is slipping from the Iron Throne's jagged shoulder. Winter has not yet closed the passes, and the north, starved of hope since the Red Wedding, has smelt blood in the water. When he finishes, silence follows. It is Lady Barbary who breaks it, voice as crisp as first frost. The wolf banners are buried, Greyjoy. You offer us a kraken stitched to a ragged scrap of direwolf fur. Why should we swear to that patchwork when Stannis offers a king's justice? THEON meets her gaze without blinking. Because my banner is not thread, he says. It is men who stand beside me. A reed arrow, an ironborn axe, a Manderly shield. They held this ruin when Ramsay came howling. They will take the Dreadfort with or without you. But with you, my lady, we spare children from siege starvation. With you, we show every holdfast that courage can be contagious. The harper's laughter rings low and surprised. THEON realizes it is Wyman Manderly chuckling behind a walrus-white mustache. Well put for a boy raised among pirates, Wyman says. I recall you saved my granddaughter from a phrase insult once, though you drunk half a flagon. He turns to Barbary. Do we tilt at krakens now or drown with flayed men later? And that is that. Lady Barbary dips her chin, lean as a winter oak, and every oath-keeper in the hall thumps a fist to chest or table. None shout, none say the words. The pact is deeper than sound. They march at dawn. Columns snake from Moat Cailin, turning the causeway's muddy track into a living braid. Crannog outriders on marsh ponies, light as brush. Manderly footmen in knee-deep blue cloaks. Ironborn reavers walking for once beside mainland kin, slinging long-hafted warhammers over shoulders instead of plundering fisher. At the columns, Hart rides THEON under a plain grey banner, marked only by a single ragged wolf, howling toward a crescent moon. He does not know who painted it, only that it appeared on a pike the night before and felt right, like a sorrow confessed. Davos keeps pace, offering seasoned counsel on supply trains and scouting lines. Behind them tramp wagons of pitch, barrels of hardtack, bundles of spare bowstrings. Forward, always forward. Every mile north beyond the neck, the world seems to exhale. Villages once cowed by Bolton taxes send timid children to stand roadside with clay lanterns. The children wave branches of pine and call out blessings from the old gods. When an ironborn captain tosses a silver stag to a girl who trots barefoot after the host, her mother weeps. The tears draw uneasy smiles from seafarers. hardened by years of raiding the Reach. Even that small moment feels like a stone dropping into still water. Ripples of possibility widening across the north. The ground changes from bog to firm heath. Gorse brightens the verges yellow, and the air turns crisper, flavored with distant snow. They skirt the wolf's wood, where leaves rattle silver under the wind, and the shared campfires at dusk become gatherings of story. One night, THEON hears a tall-heart soldier telling a Crannog lad how Robb Stark once leapt a burning trench at the Whispering Wood. The next, a Salt Cliff woman recounts the day young Brandon Stark tumbled from a tower but lived. Each tale hovers like a small fire sprite, turning fear to warmth. And THEON cannot decide if they mend or sting. Both, perhaps. Ravens keep pace overhead, as though pulled by fate's tether. One brings word that Asha has slipped deepwood Moat with a band of veterans and searches the woods for loyal men. Another reports Rusu's refusal to sanction aid. A third claims Ramsay has taken to flaying deserters on the Dreadfort's gate to stiffen spines. THEON folds each parchment, sets it atop the last, and uses them to light the Night's Watch fire. Messages fuel flames as well as pine resin. 10 days from Moat Cailin, they reach the banks of the Weeping Water, its dark rush reflecting a half-moon. Scouts return whispering of silent hamlets, gates barred, livestock vanished into forest hideaways. Not fear of them, they say. Fear of the Dreadfort feeds. Ramsay's foragers have grown ruthless. THEON orders supply wagons broken open, saltfish and oatcakes distributed to every door they pass. Children's eyes widen in the torch glow. Old farmers mutter thanks. He commands a small parchment banner, half wolf, half kraken, left on each threshold so wandering neighbors may see and wonder. Wordless heraldry, carried on morning smoke. On the 12th sunrise, the Dreadfort's pale brick keep appears like a fist thrust up from rolling grey hills. Its walls gleam the color of shorn lamb, crenellations jagged as snapped bone. A great moat circles it, waters black and lazy, fed by little streams choked with silt. Beyond stand paddocks, where no horses graze now, only flayed corpses dangling from X-shaped trees, skins tanning in a chill wind. The sight halts the vanguard. A silence falls heavy enough to crush birdsong. THEON rides to the fore and stares. He expected revulsion, but what floods him is anger so clean it surprises. Once, that cross had been raised for his own back. The pink flesh, the raw screams. He tastes bile, spits it into bracken, and lets the rage settle like a fine-edged blade in his gut. Then he raises a hand, signaling the army to fan out and dig ditches for the siege. The motions come as natural as breathing now, a choreography learned in marsh and blood. Night climbs the sky on sable paws. Fires spark behind Bolton ramparts, small and nervous, and horns sound thrice. Challenge, threat. THEON answers with silence. Instead, he walks among his men, asking after a cobbler's twisted ankle, reminding a sailor to oil his bowstring against frost. He ends at the healer's cart, where Maester Holm measures tinctures by moonlight. Holm looks up, lines carved deep around his mouth. Boys keep waking, screaming, he murmurs. Not from wounds, dreams. THEON nods. He collects 2 clay cups, pours a gill of warmed wine into each, slips willow bark crumb for bitterness, and carries one through camp to a crude lean-to, where a young Crannog scout shakes beneath blankets. The boy tries to stand. THEON kneels instead, presses the cup to trembling fingers, and talks softly of Harlaw storms, until the kid's eyes shudder. Leadership, again, is presence. Erst light, trumpets slice the chill air. Ramsay appears on the battlement, astride the flayed man banner, cloak of stitched flesh, hanging shredded to reveal black scale undercoat. He holds aloft a parchment and speaks, voice projecting unnaturally loud. Someone built a speaking trumpet to carry it. THEON Turncloak, he calls. I have in my dungeons the bones of the wolf pups you burnt. Come reclaim them, if you can find courage in your eunuch hide. His laugh claws the sky. The jeer drapes itself over THEON like icy chains, but he does not move, does not rise to the bait. He stands before the host and simply speaks one word. Lose. A volley of arrows arcs high, whistling silver. They crash upon the Dreadfort's towers, clattering like hail on marble. None reach Ramsay. Range is too great, but the gesture is answer enough. Ramsay's grin fades. He spits into the courtyard and disappears behind brick, while Bolton men ready boiling oil and man the scorpions. THEON's engineers drag stout pines from nearby copses, shaving trunks into siege rams capped with kraken-curved brawn. Reed's sappers wade waist-deep in the moat's icy shallows to probe weaknesses. 2 drown in hidden whirlpools, but 5 return with news of a silt plug where water runs, shallow enough for a causeway of reed mats. As twilight deepens, a thunder of hooves arrives from west. Asha Greyjoy gallops in under a blue-black sky, hair blowing wild, riding ahead of 200 hill clansmen and 80 ironborn who wear the wolf's head pin. She swings off her mount and grabs THEON by the collar, slamming foreheads together in a gesture half affection, half rebuke. "You look thinner," she mutters. He grins back, tears stinging unbidden. "You look free," he answers. That night, brother and sister share hard bread and onion stew beside the command fire, speaking in low tones while sparks drift skyward. Asha admits she thought him dead after Winterfell burned. He confesses he thought her lost to flensing knives at Deepwood. They speak of Father Balon's fall from the bridge, old news across the seas, but fresh wound here, and neither knows how to mourn him. They agree, finally, that the Seastone chair will keep cold without them. The North needs them more. When dawn breaks, they stand shoulder to shoulder before the combined host. Greyjoys, Starlings, Hornwoods, Risewells, Manderleys, Reeds. A tapestry woven from threads once frayed to break it. THEON raises his sword. No speech, only the sword-catching sunrise, and 12,000 throats lift a roar that cracks frost from the grass. The siege begins in earnest with thunder drums, cut from old ironborn masts, their deep boom rolling across fields to hammer Bolton morale. Ramsay answers by catapulting a barrel of severed hands into the trench. They slap the earth like wet fish, scattering defenders back from the parapets. Maester Hall marshals quicklime to stench pits, burning infected meat before plague can root in camp. Nights fill with dueling horns, the kraken's deep cry, the flayed man's shrill counter. Sleep becomes rare currency, traded between watch shifts like contraband. On the 7th night, snow arrives in quiet flurries, frosting tents, muffling boots. It favors the besiegers, whose numbers swell hourly as mountain clans hear rumor of Bolton weakness. By torchlight, Davos proposes a breach using Stannis' finest. Heavy shields, Stormlander pikes, ladders clad in wet hides to resist flame. THEON counters with a subtler move. A hidden culvert, once used for waste, that his sappers believe opens beyond the moat. He volunteers to lead that infiltration himself. Asha scowls, fists on hips, but reads in his eyes the need. This fight is personal, in a way surface battle cannot quench. Finally she grins that crooked shark grin. "I'll hold the walls, little brother. Leave me a scrap of Ramsay, though, or I'll call you miser." So on the moonless 9th night of siege, THEON, Mira Reed, Black Lauren, and 12 marsh stealth volunteers slip into the culvert. Water numb as iron clamps their calves, stench of old refuse burns lungs. They crawl under arches slick with lichen, past iron grates rust gnawed to brittle lace, guided by faint drafts that smell of dog fur and hot tallow. Rats flee before them, squealing. At one bend they find a collapsed segment clogged by snared corpses of earlier deserters. Bolton men punished with drowning. THEON forces himself through, slime coating his face, and wonders if baptism may taste like this, foul yet purifying. Hours later, they emerge beneath the kennels. Lantern light flickers through slats. Hounds stir, but Mira slips blow darts into jowls before howls can rise. THEON motions silence, heart pounding so fiercely he fears even the stones hear. They creep along corridors lined with pink banners, the flayed man grinning in torch glow. At a guardroom, two bolden men gamble over knucklebones. Lauren's axe silences them before dice finish rattling. The group ascends spiral stairs, each tread bringing them closer to inner yard. They surface inside the Dreadfort's central bailey just as dawn smudges slate cloud. Snow drifts thick, muting boot crunch. Across the yard, Ramsay stands by a scaffold, finishing the lashing of two villagers to red X-frames. His hair hangs in frozen spikes. Blood freckles his cheeks like false freckles. Seeing THEON blur from shadow, he barks laughter. "Reek," he calls, voice cracking frost. "Come crawl back. Did you miss my flame rune?" THEON steps forward, bow raised. Every motion feels preordained, as though some god of justice plucks his limb. He looses. The arrow strikes Ramsay's thigh, spinning him sideways. Lauren's neck shaft thuds into the bastard's shoulder. Ramsay drops to a knee, snarling. "You can't kill what you carved," he screams, pawing at the shaft. But THEON does not kill him yet. He lowers the bow, crosses the snow. With each step, memories flash, the knife slicing his finger, the laughter echoing dark, the name Reek repeated until meaning bled out of it. He draws a long dirk, its blade etched with storm runes gifted by a Northman smith. "I was Reek," he says, voice level. "Now I am memory, and you." He slashes the rope, securing a villager. "You are passing." Behind him, Mira cuts the other captive free. Lauren presses Ramsay to the icy ground. Knee-grinding arrow, deeper. Screams rip the yard. Garrison men spill from doorways but freeze at the sight of their lord pinned. THEON raises his dirk for all to see. "Drop blades," he commands. "Yield the Dreadfort. Your lord is broken." Some obey at once, swords clanging onto flagstone. A few charge. Mira's darts fell them mid-stride. Lauren's axe cleaves another. The skirmish lasts heartbeats. Snow drinks blood, red bright against white. When silence returns, THEON hauls Ramsay upright, blade pressed beneath his jaw. "Order surrender," he says. Ramsay laughs, a breathy hitch. Then he spits blood and bellows. "Kill them! Kill!" The bastard's eyes widen, confusion blooming greater than pain, as though he never imagined the moment he dealt so often could be repaid. THEON does not watch him fall. He turns to the garrison instead. "Choose," he warns, voice hoarse. They choose, kneeling. Horns blast outside. The assault timed with infiltration. Laddermen crest walls, banners unfurl. But the fight ends before it starts. Gates swing wide, rusted chains moaning. The last stronghold of House Bolton folds like wet parchment. Snow continues its slow descent as blue dusk settles. Fires blaze in every hearth, food distributed to terrified servants. Maester Holm tends the kennel hounds, many half-starved. They lick his hands, tails weakly thumping. Davos oversees a new guard shift, Stannismen pairing with Manderleys to maintain order. Asha prowls the armory, confiscating flaying knives for a grand bonfire. Reed scouts scour dungeons, rescuing gaunt prisoners who weep when daylight kisses their faces. In the great hall, THEON strips Ramsay's cloak from his corpse and flings it onto that same fire, watching stitched flesh curl and blacken. The stink is foul beyond measure, but he forces himself to breathe until lungs ache, as if to draw every particle of Ramsay's cruelty into the flame and burn it within himself. Asha stands beside him, arm looped through his. No words pass, The crackle speaks enough. 3 days are spent burying the dead properly. Snowdrifts mound into white cairns over mass graves. Maesters sprinkle pine ash and murmured prayers to both sea and tree. The flayed manbanas are torn into rags and used to bind wounds until no shred remains. In their place, the direwolf of Stark is raised on the rampart for the first time since Robb joked with his men in that very yard before marching south. THEON himself secures the rope, gloved hands trembling not from cold but from something inside thawing at last. On the morning of the 4th day, when pale sun peeks through low clouds, a council gathers in the Dreadfort's hall of pillars. Wyman Manderley seats his girth upon the high table bench. Asha lounges on a crossed spear. Davos folds arms across mailed chest. Lady Barbary leans sharp of shoulder against cool stone. THEON enters last, snow still clinging to hair from an early patrol. All eyes track him. He says only, "Winterfell." A rumble of assent rolls the length of the hall. Plans unfurl. How many men may march? Who guards the Dreadfort until rightful Stark returns? What to do with Roose Bolton if he rides north too late? THEON listens, contributes, defers. Leadership again is sharing. That night, he walks the ramparts alone. Star clusters glitter bright in brittle air. Below, flickering torches trace the ring wall where Bolton skinned his enemies. Now children play tag while their mothers set fresh straw for mounts. THEON leans on the cold stone, gloved fingers stroking the coarse rock. He remembers a younger self crowing, raw triumph atop Winterfell's towers, ignorant of cost. This new quiet inside him feels better than triumph. It feels right. Steps crunch snow behind. Mira appears, cloak-hooded, eyes twinkling with reflection of far fires. "My father sends word," she says. A white direwolf was seen near the wall, running south beside a crippled boy astride a giant elk. He says the old gods carry strange tidings. THEON meets her gaze, throat tight. "If the dead can walk, so can the lost," he whispers. She smiles, fierce as frost-hewn cattail. "Then walk, Lord THEON. The north rides at dawn." He nods. The wind whistles through merlons like distant harp strings. A song of beginnings disguised as endings. He draws a breath of winter-sharp air, holds it, then lets it escape in a long plume of steam that drifts into starlight. Somewhere behind the horizon stands Winterfell, broken by flame yet waiting, stones patient as old sins. He will return not as a usurper but as a guardian, a penitent, a bridge between salt and snow. And when he does, perhaps the gods, old, new, drowned, will weigh what he has become against what he was and find balance. Until then, he turns from the battlement, strides toward the stair, and begins the descent into a future pounding steady as his heart. Each beat an echo of wolves howling welcome across a land waking from nightmare. One, and then she go me, and I says I. Snow melt glistened on the cobblestones of the Dreadfort's inner yard like pearls scattered by some careless giant, the drips pattering from roof eaves in an irregular. Dawn had bleached the sky to a chalky gray, yet lanterns still burned in pockets of shadow, and smoke from churned pine cookfires feathered upward to mingle with the first threads of mist. All across the castle new voices overlapped in a messy, hopeful din. Manderley quartermasters barking for carts, Crannog scouts trading swamp eels for wolf jerky, Ironborn laughing at the cold as they hammered the last of the Bolton X-trees into kindling. The siege was less than a week behind them, but already the fortress felt transformed. No longer a lair of flayed skins and fear, but a staging ground for something bigger, harder, brighter than vengeance. Reclamation. THEON walked a slow circuit of the walls, breathing deep, the smell of sap-rich pine torches and distant heather. Each step on the pale brick battlements seemed to resonate in his bones, like the castle itself hummed to the rhythm of their marching hearts. Below, A pair of mountain clansmen hauled fresh straw into kennels that once sheltered Ramsay's hounds. The beasts inside barked anxiously, picking up on the strange kindness in their new master's voices. Nearby, a trio of White Harbor masons patched arrow-scarred stonework with mortar, the color of river clay, whistling a sea shanty meant to keep time. And everywhere he turned, fluttered the stark gray banners scraped hastily from sailcloth, that half-wolf, half-kraken sigil, which had begun as an improvised scrap, and now blossomed like winter roses along every parapet. It felt unreal, but when THEON laid a gloved hand to the nearest rope, its knotted heft was solid under his palm. At the western watchtower, Asha waited with a spear across her shoulders, her boot perched on a crenelle of pink-hued brick. She squinted toward the forested horizon, where faint black dots, scouts on wiry neck ponies, flickered in and out of sight along the ridge's crest. They found no Bolton riders 'tween here and the Barrowlands, she said without turning. If Roose is coming home, he crawls slower than a snail on Maiden's Day. He may be pinned in King's Landing, THEON answered, scanning the same line of misty hills. Word is Cersei's regents chose to name a puppet North Marcher. One Sir Jellic, or so Davos claims. Father and son both lost favor the moment Tommen's crown looked wobbly. Asha snorted. Lions eat their own tails. Good, let them choke. She dropped her spear, rolling stiff shoulders. How long until we ride? The marsh gate swings at mid-morn, he said. 5,000 strike north on the King's Road. Davos and Manderley's riders take the eastern course to cut white knife crossings. You and the hill clans harry any straggler garrisons on our flank. He paused, searching her face. You will keep safe? She flashed him that familiar shark grin. There's no safety in war, brother, only stories. I'll bring back good ones. She clapped his arm, then tossed the spear to a passing clansman and set off down the stair, cloak snapping in brisk wind. Left alone, THEON rested his elbows on rough mortar and tried to feel the earth shift toward destiny. But destiny was maddeningly silent. Instead, he listened for simpler things. The cluck of a hen in some unseen coop, the clang of a pikehead knocking against shield, the hush of snow sliding free from slate roofs as the sun burned higher. All ordinary, yet each seemed a thread in the tapestry he prayed to weave anew. A north not ruled by fear, but by the memory of how fear was. He descended the turret steps, boots thumping the spiral treads, and emerged into the castle yard just as Maester Holm finished lashing a lacquered chest to the back of a two-wheeled mule cart. Holm's breath fogged silver. His fingers trembled with age and exhaustion, but the Maester's eyes were bright with purpose. Medicinals, he rasped, tugging the last knot. We may meet winter wolves on the road before the next holdfast, and wounds fester fast in frost under thick pelts. Will the wounded ride with us? THEON asked, nodding toward the infirmary hut, where a line of splinted men shuffled out, each supported by another. Holm dabbed his brow. A few may march. Most will remain under Lady Barbari's guard. She left 30 archers and 2 surgeons. He eyed THEON with something in between pride and worry. Walk well, my lord. The old gods taste sincerity, but their justice can be feral. I know, THEON murmured. And thank you for staying. They'll need your quills and patience more than I. He squeezed the maester's thin shoulder and strode on. Atop the outer gatehouse, Davos Seaworth supervised the final inspections of a column of horse. The smuggler knight's cloak was patched in 3 colors, but the oiled mail beneath gleamed as though each ring had been loved by a smith's hammer that very dawn. When he spotted THEON, he offered a weary salute. Your sister's riders took enough dried fish to feed a fleet, he said. Either she expects a long route, or she's preparing a feast for Winterfell's kitchens. Let her, THEON replied. We'll all celebrate when stock banners fly again. He watched a groom tighten the girth on Davos' courser. will Stannis ride himself? If weather and pride allow, Davos said, mounting. His grace moves for Castle Serwyn first, to establish quarter. He trusts you to plant the Grey Wolf. Theon acknowledged the weight of that trust with a nod. The main host massed under a banner sky. Snow-dusted helms and pauldrons, woolen cloaks blazed with house colors, green reeds, white mermen, black broken bats, and the dull bronze of Iron Island's krakens. It was a patchquilt army, but one stitched by necessity and belief. As horns brayed the advance, Theon swung onto his gelding, Greywing, a rangy smoke-colored horse, with a scar across the muzzle from early chain training. He guided Greywing to the vanguard where Mira Reed waited, frog spear strung across her back, and Lady Cybele Glover sat arrow-straight beside her, war spear in hand. Somewhere among the ranks skulked Jonas Brackensbane, leading a ragged clutch of escaped Winterfell smallfolk who had trailed the army like ghosts, begging to fight for vengeance. They carried axes carved from hearthwood, but resolve lent iron to their grips. Castle gates groaned open when the host rolled forth under a crystalline sky, the wind at their backs singing through pine boughs in a low, encouraging drone. Theon felt again that strange hush inside him, not numbness, but rather a space cleared of fear and shame, filled with the quiet of decision. He had done monstrous things, but each step now walked a path of atonement, and though the gods might never absolve him, he could at least give them reason to hesitate. Greywing snorted, hooves crunching on the frost-hard road, and the world tipped into motion. They rode past fields long fallow beneath Bolton grass, past villages where windows shuddered at the first sight of banners, but cautiously reopened when no torches were hurled, no barns set aflame. Theon made certain that each hamlet received a token, a cask of oats, a string of river pearls, a handful of nails hammered into a thatch roof. These small gifts sowed whispers in their wake, whispers that sprouted into bolder rumors by dusk fires. The Greyjoy wolf rides for Winterfell, they said. The Bolton bastard is dead. His flaying knives melted down for plowshare. Some whispered that Ned Stark's ghost walked at Theon's side, guiding his hand to justice. Such tales traveled faster than ravens. On the third day, thick clouds tumbled from the north like bruised cotton, and snowflakes big as moths drifted into the column's path. Horns called a quick halt, while Mira's swamp charioteers scouted a sheltered glen choked with larch and mountain ash. There they struck camp, and by sundown drifts stood waist-tall in the open clearings. But the fires burned stubborn, and the men sang. Theon huddled under a canvas lean-to, poring over tattered maps by firelight with Lady Cybele and Davos chief scout, a narrow-eyed man named Arwood Whitebar. Arwood jabbed a charcoal finger at a wrinkled square near the map's center. Garhold raiders have slipped across the last river, he warned. Likely hunting desperate plunder now that Bolton coin's gone thin. If they reach Winterfell first, they may hold out long enough for Roose to gather southern sellswards. Theon traced the path across the vellum, lips compressed. We outpace them by 4 days if the storm eases, but Winterfell's walls can withstand a moon of siege if manned by 100 determined fools. He looked to Lady Cybele. How many sworn glovers answer your summons? She lifted a gauntleted hand, counting silent. 300 swords, 200 pikes, near the same in archers. Many hold 6 moons' resentment from the Ironborn occupation. Her gaze did not waver. They will follow you, for you were honest when you repaid wrong with iron price on your own skin. Theon's cheeks warmed despite the cold. He had not realized that the day he had knelt before the graves at Deepwood, begging forgiveness of the dead and promising to buy new life with deeds, word had spread like thaw among the Glovers. Dividends of humility, he supposed, were rarely swift but often astonishing. They set watchers in 3 rings, mead horns passed from century to century, and lanterns burned in hollowed snow niches to keep frostbite at bay. Around midnight, Theon crept from his tent, unable to sleep. Heavy flakes still sifted from a low, iron belly of sky, but wind had died to a hush. He walked the perimeter and found Mira, perched atop a fallen pine trunk, bow across her knees, eyes glinting amber in torch spill. "You should rest," he said softly. She shrugged inside a wolfskin cloak. "Dreams come harder than wakefulness before a fight. The neck teaches readiness." She studied him a moment. "Does the Iron Islands teach that too?" "The islands teach vigilance," THEON replied, tucking gloved hands into armpits. "But they forget to temper it with patience." He gazed into the snow-weighted silence. "I am learning." Mira's smile was small, but warm. "Learning keeps us alive." She knuckled her chin toward the valley below. "Tomorrow we reach the crossroads. Beyond lies the Barrowlands and the King's Road 4. There the old tales say ghosts walk where kings of winter fell. Perhaps they will join us." "Nani, ow." "Perhaps," Cailin echoed. Snow melted on his lashes. Dawn broke windless and bright, a deceptive peace. The sky blazed pale blue, and the snow crusted hard enough underfoot that wagons rattled across drifts without sinking. They pushed onward, hearts buoyed by sunshine, though breath smoked thick in the cold. Ravens circled overhead, cawing at the glitter blanket below, as if mocking men who trod such a fragile path. By noon, they passed a line of ancient stone cairns, half swallowed by snow. THEON paused to touch one, feeling the moss-smooth rock beneath gauntlet. An inscription in the old tongue eroded illegible, yet he traced it anyway, whispering a promise he could not translate even to himself. Beyond the field of cairns, the land sloped gentle downward to the King's Road fork, where a ramshackle inn stood crooked amid a sparse copse of towering ironwoods. Smoke coiled from its chimney, yet shutters were nailed shut, and icicles bristled from lintels like broken teeth. The vanguard approached wary. Mira and Arwood slipped forward to scout, bows half drawn. Moments later they returned, gestures sharp. Inside, benches lay overturned around a central hearth, tankards frozen mid-spill. A single pot of leek stew sat congealed on embers long dead. On the floor near the back door lay 3 corpses, Carhold men by the look of their black frost cloaks, throats slit tidy. Lady Cybele knelt, brushing snow crystals from one dead man's cheek. "Cut clean. Throat from nape," she murmured. "The work of silent sisters or men who worship death in other tongues." She glanced up. "Bravosi, sellswords perhaps, or faceless men," Arwood muttered, crossing himself. THEON rose, striding to a toppled bench, where a scrap of parchment fluttered in the draught. He pinned it with a dagger and unfolded. The quill lines were spare, the script curling like smoke. "Winter waits for no sellsword. Yield the wolf or choke upon the snow. No signature." He crumpled it. "Threat," he growled. Though whether aimed at Carhold hirelings or their prey, none knew. They buried the bodies behind the inn, marking graves with sword hilts. Then they turned north again, pace quickened. Hush fell upon the host, as though each soul sensed eyes upon them from hidden boughs. Ravens tracked them. Once, Mira loosed a shaft at a particularly large bird with white feathers peppering its wings. It dodged, almost mocking, then soared off toward shadow-glazed foothills. The following night, camp pitched in a shallow vale. THEON summoned a council in his tent. Snow-breathed candles flickered over the map, and wind rattled the hides. Wyman Manderley's nephew Wylis jabbed a fat finger to the parchment. "Reports say a column of Carhold men cut west 2 leagues behind us. Likely they spare themselves the hazard of our numbers, but move to Winterfell by tributary trails." "Lion, oh Daisy." Davos stroked his beard. "We dare not divide strength too thin, yet if those men reinforce the castle, they stiffen garrison resolve." Sabel Glover suggested flanking detachments. Asha favored night raids on the Carhold supply wagons. Mira spoke little, eyes narrowed, as if listening to something beneath the tense, gentle flap. Finally, when arguments sagged to silence, THEON cleared his throat. "We will not scatter," he decided. "We carry the weight of every village that prays for a new dawn. Our strength is in unity. Let Carhold come to the field before Winterfell's walls. We will break them there." Heads bowed, Davos dipped his quill, marking new marching orders. Sleep eluded THEON after the council. He paced his rug-strewn floor until the chill crept under the hide flaps. Beyond the tent, campfires dotted the valley like embers of a shattered star, each with its circle of men hunched in quiet songs. He walked among them, listening to lullabies sung in the old tongue, to ribald sea shanties turned soft by snow. At the largest fire, he found the Winterfell smallfolk, led by Jonas Brackensbane. They rose when he approached, faces shadow-gaunt, but eyes alive. Jonas bowed low, one arm across his threadbare cloak. "My lord, we carved direwolves from pine when not on guard," he explained, showing a row of rough figurines on the snow crust. "For the children when we win." THEON crouched, picking up a piece no larger than his thumb. It bore a wolf's crooked grin and tail curling like a question. He tucked it into his belt pouch. "We will win," he told Jonas, "and children will need toys." The gratitude in their silent nods warmed him more than the flames. 2 dawns later, the host crested a hill and beheld Winterfell at last. A bastion of ancient gray granite sprawled vast upon white plains, its walls ring within ring like great tree churns, still sprouting new shoots across the ages. Smoke rose from the chimneys, though fewer plumes than THEON remembered. The hothouse glass glinted frostily. The first keep loomed squat, and the broken tower still slanted like a defiant salute. Seeing it again jolted him, memories unreeled in lurid flashes. The crackle of burning hay in the stables, the wails of Septon Chael in the godswood, the jagged sob of his own voice as he named himself Prince of Winterfell. For a single doomed heartbeat, he swayed but forced himself steady. The army spilled across a scrub fir ridge, settling into formation as drums rumbled low and steady. Below, Winterfell's gates remained shut. On the battlements, catapults stood silent, but black shapes moved. Archers, lookouts. A banner flew, not the flayed man, but a black bear rampant on a green field. Kostak's men had not yet arrived. Instead, House Mormont's sigil flapped grimly. That and a smaller square of drab brown he did not recognize. Davos spoke first. "This reeks of desperation. Mormont swore to Stannis at the wall. Yet some broke away under that old sow Meg's cousin Shella. They might have thrown in with Carhold for silver." Asha peered through Farwin's spyglass. "There," she muttered, pointing to the eastern barbican. "Cross chains, a sauté pan, cook's guild." She laughed sharply. "Castles half manned by scullions." THEON frowned. "A trap, still. We treat every arrow slit like a ravening maw." He turned to Mira and Arwood. "Circle to the Godswood wall. Find if the sally port remains unguarded." As scouts darted off, he faced the host arrayed. Pikes bristling in morning light, archers kneeling behind pavises hammered from frozen hides, iron-born axemen chanting low sea prayers for courage. He rode the front rank, Greywing dancing under tension. When he spoke, his voice carried by some instinct beyond training. "Winterfell stands not as stone, but as memory. Those stones remember love and oath and blood shed to shield the weak. Some here, myself above all, stained that memory. But today we cleanse it. Today we return the North to its heart." "No, Kabibi." No roar greeted his speech. Instead, a hush rippled outward, solemn and promising. It felt more binding than cheers. Horns signaled advance. The first wave, a phalanx of Glover's shield wall and Manderly spears, marched across the snowy plain, boots crunching, banners whipping flat in stiff wind. From the walls arrows hissed, clattering on shields, few found flesh. The castle's southern gate remained barred. Behind the line, THEON's Iron and Crannog cohort held reserve, waiting. Asha's riders flanked far right, launching javelins at parapet blind spots. Davos' men hauled a single scorpion onto a sled and angled bolts into tower windows, forcing archers to duck. The assault was probing, not yet full. They sought weakness. A half-hour in, a horn brayed from the godswood side. Mira's scouts returned, waving green reed banners. The sally port at the hunter's gate, where once Bran had slipped out to chase wolves, stood open. A snowdrift half blocking it from the inside, unmanned but chained wide for wagon impressions. Evidently, whoever controlled Winterfell lacked bodies to guard every gap. THEON acted. He dispatched Asha's riders to feint at the east wall, drawing attention, while he gathered 50 Ironborn veterans and 20 Winterfell smallfolk who knew the yard's layout by heart. Cloaks darkened with grime. They slinked across the tree line and into the godswood's hush, where snow muffled even Greywing's snorts. Ancient weirwood boughs drooped low under snow, red leaves stuck to ice crusts like drying blood. The heart tree's face loomed through drifting white, with eyes black seam lines. THEON bowed as he passed, no words, only a pulse of plea. They reached the sally port, where iron hinges groaned softly in wind. Inside yawned a passage, coiled by spiderwebs. Jonas Brackensbane slipped first, dagger ready, vanishing into gloom. The rest followed, cautious. They emerged under the keep's shadow into a courtyard near the glass gardens. A single stableboy hefting a short sword gaped at them. Jonas disarmed him gently, pushing him aside with a murmur of hide. Snow fell heavier now, cloaking their silhouettes. Voices rose from the great hall, shouting over clatter of bench legs. Mormont axes, THEON guessed, arguing with kitchen sergeants. Perfect. He signaled the split, Ironborn to secure barracks and gate winches, small folk to slip through servant corridors and unlatch the main portcullis once the gatehouse fell. He himself led a knot of 6 across the yard toward the armory. It felt dreamlike, every stone a memory. Here was the well where Bran tricked him with a snowball. There, the paddock fence where Robb had vaulted laughing. Each step stirred both grief and fuel for resolve. Near the armory door, 2 Carhold men in mismatched mail loitered, smoking twisted strips of bark that hissed like low serpents. THEON's group moved as one, crossbow twang, arrow thunk, both men spitting crimson. They collapsed without warning. THEON caught one, easing him to snow, murmuring, quiet, though the man already stilled. Price of war, he thought, though his belly twisted. They stormed the armory, an echoing stone chamber half disheveled, racks overturned, crates busted open. Yet plenty of weapons remained. Ironborn-filled sacks, with grappling hooks and spare bolts. THEON claimed 2 short spears, remembering how Lord Eddard prized nimble weapons in close yard fighting. He spun one experimentally. Muscle remembered. Sudden uproar erupted across the yard. Horns, shouts, clang of portcullis. The assault outside must be pressing. THEON peered through an arrow slit. The southern gate rattled, snow-coated timbers sagging. Archers on the wall shifted position, distracted. Good. They sprinted to the gate tower stair, iron boots clanging. Jonas and a pair of stable lads already fought on the landing against 3 cook sergeants, wielding cleavers. The fight was messy. Wood chips flew, clang of metal on pot helm, curses in gutter tongue. THEON leapt the last steps and jammed his spear butt into one man's ribs. Another turned, eyes wide, and Jonas finished him with a hatchet blow to collarbone. The last sergeant, a burly bald fellow, tried to grapple, but THEON rammed him with shoulder and tossed him down the stairwell like a sack of turnips, where he tumbled to the stone floor below with a neck-snapping crunch. Silence followed. They yanked the winch chains, Slowly the portcullis groaned upward. Outside, THEON glimpsed the Glover shield wall pressing close, their boots slipping on ice turf, axes hewing at the timbers. He shouted down the stairwell, "Gate rises! Hold fast!" A horn answered. Lady Sibyl's signal. Moments later, iron-shod boots thundered through the arch. The assault poured into the yard. Chaos bloomed. Mormont defenders, few and ill-organized, converged only to be swept aside by surging pikes. Some dropped weapons, others fled toward the great keep. Arrows zipped from tower windows, but numbers dwindled as archers saw hopeless odds. In less than 15 minutes, Winterfell was theirs. THEON stood in the center of the yard, snow swirling thick as banners were hoisted. Stark grey direwolf sewn hastily with kraken thread now soared atop the broken tower, ripping in cold wind. Horns brayed exultant notes, but THEON could not feel triumph yet. He strode to the great hall doors, pushing them wide. Inside, dozen men and women knelt, weapons cast down. A Mormont second cousin, 4 Carhold sellswords, 2 cooks, a maester in brown. At their edge, a tall gaunt woman arose, hair braided with bear claws. Lady Shella Mormont, eyes blazing. She met THEON's gaze with fury and grief. "We defended what was left when snow buried the realm," she said flatly. "You come with wolves on your banners, but I see kraken eyes behind." "I come with responsibility," THEON replied. He unslung his cloak clasp, a twin wolf kraken brooch hammered from old bronze, and offered it to her open palm. "This castle is not bounty but burden. Take this, ride south to Stannis, and tell him the heart of the north beats still. If you fight beside us, your bear will find a summit worth roaring from." Nanmadania. She studied the brooch, then him. Minutes ticked. Finally, she closed her fist round it. "Theon Greyjoy," she said, voice rough. "I'll bear message, but the north will judge deeds." "It already has," he whispered. Outside, bells clanged from the sept, ringing for the first time since the Ironborn sacked the castle. Snow fell heavier, blanketing blood spatters, muffling cheers. Theon crossed the Godswood yard, alone. At the heart tree he knelt, snow soaking through furs. Red leaves fluttered above like soft tongues. "It is done," he told the face-carved bark. "Not paid in full, but I begin payment." He pressed a palm to the wood, felt grooves of ancient carvings under skin. "Guard them, Bran, Rickon, Robb. Wherever their spirits roam, I will guard what they love." As he left the grove, horns to the east sounded again. A different pitch, urgent. Riders flew through the blizzard, Carhold's scouts, ragged, a remnant of the force trailing them. They reined at the gate, hailing surrender. Their captain dismounted, kneeling. "Word reached us Ramsay's banner fell," he panted. "Our men desert in scores. Carhold is lost to whites. We come seeking refuge." Theon granted them quarter. Swords surrendered at the armory. The war's tide had turned monstrous, not man against man, but the living against the encroaching cold dead. That evening, under the rafters of the great hall, fires roared in twin hearths. Theon stood beside Davos and Asha before a throng of lords and captains. He raised a cup of mead, though the weight of future battles bore heavy on his shoulders. "Winterfell is reclaimed," he declared, "but winter itself is yet to be faced. The night gathers at the wall. We must mend as we war." He lifted the cup toward the highest beam, where the direwolf banner now hung untorn. "For the north, for the living." The shout that answered was not deafening, but deep, a rumble like subterranean stone shifting. Steadfast, sure. After the mead, they parceled duties, archers to rooflines, stonemasons to shore the breached east wall, scouts to the King's Road. Asha volunteered to ride to Deepwood and rally the hill clans. Davos prepared ravens to Stannis and White Harbor. Mira Reed took charge of the Godwood's hidden tunnels, mapping them anew. The tasks spun out like spokes from a wheel, each vital. Long after the hall emptied, THEON lingered at the central hearth, poking embers with an iron poker. Sparks danced up the chimney throat. Footsteps approached. Lady Sabelle Glover, cloak still dusted with snow. She regarded him through lamplight. "History will remember you differently than rumor," she said. "Rumor has long claws," he answered. "Even claws grow dull if never sharpened again." She extended a parchment. "I penned a letter to my kin at Deepwood, naming you Warden Reclaimer, until a Stark survivor claims seat, or Northmen choose otherwise. It bears 5 seals: Manderley, Reed, Risewell, Dustin, Glover." The poker slipped from his fingers, clanging on stone. He picked it up, hands trembling. "I am no warden. Not until sworn by a knight and blessed by a heart tree. No," she allowed. "But you hold Winterfell. That means something." He closed his eyes, letting the heat of the fire bathe his face. He saw flax gold hair and wind, little Rickon chasing Shaggy Dog, laughing. He saw Maester Luwin's gentle smile. He saw Bran on a rooftop, arms spread like wings. Hair slid cold down his cheek. "I will safeguard it," he vowed, "until the rightful heir returns, or until I lie in its crypt beside them." Sabelle nodded once, firm. She left him then, footsteps echoing off pillars. Snow whispered against shuttered windows. Somewhere above in the rookery, ravens stirred as Maester Holm coaxed them into flight again, each bearing word that Winterfell, heart of the north, beat anew. On the battlements, Night's Watch lanterns would soon appear. Jon Snow's black brothers, answering unseen summons, perhaps. Beyond, the cold winds would carry stench of white walkers and white hordes. But tonight, for this sliver of time, the castle's fires roared bright. Theon let the poker rest and sat before the flames until the first coppers of dawn bled into the high-slit windows. Exhaustion weighed his limbs, but his mind floated, buoyed by a promise kept, though fragile, as the frosted glass still adorning the hothouse down the yard. Tomorrow would bring raven croaks and new alliances, demands of grain and steel, children to settle in empty chambers, graves to mark in the gods' wood. Yet, tonight, he allowed himself stillness. Atonement was a road without end, but at its mile markers stood moments like this. Silence filled by embers, the faint drone of wind, the knowledge of wrongs faced and, perhaps, begun to be righted. When dawn's pale blade sliced the sky, Theon Greyjoy rose, donned the wolf-kraken cloak, and stepped onto the courtyard, where snowflakes drifted lazy as feathers. He inhaled icy air that tasted of pine smoke and possibility. Around him, soldiers stirred from tents pitched within the second ring wall. The clatter of cookpots and sparring blades chimed like morning bells. Children of the castle, those who had hidden in cellars or fled to barns, slipped from doorways, blinking at the lamplight, discovering for the first time in years that the yard belonged to them again. "Breakfast," Theon called gently, and tossed a soapstone wolf carved by Jonas into the air. A boy with chapped cheeks and wide eyes caught it, amazement crackling in his grin. Theon ruffled his hair. "Plenty more where that came from," he said. The boy scampered away to show friends. Theon turned toward the southern gate where the King's Road stretched unseen beyond white haze. Somewhere along that route marched Stannis, and perhaps a ghostly direwolf, perhaps a crippled prince of Greenseers. All stories waiting to be written in fresh snow. He felt again that hush inside, a vessel cleared, ready to carry hope. He set his hand to the wolf-scarred rampart and whispered words the wind stole away, but which the stones surely heard. "I am of Winterfell, now and always." The stones hummed beneath frost, and the dawn spread wider, painting the snowfields with palest gold, promise of a sun that even the longest night could not forever eclipse.